like they're lining up.
Well, they're excited.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sons of Mjolnir. I'm Gorgon.
Hey, I'm Fat Thor.
And it's just us today. We're going to be chatting with you guys a little bit about what's upcoming with Thor. Y'all notice our buddy Cap is missing today. He's off saving the world over in Ireland. Wish him the best of luck on that. So today we're just going to get a little chat from me and TJ here. Chat with you guys about what's coming up in Thor, Love and Thunder. As most of y'all know, the big bad on that is going to be Gorr the God Butcher, who's going to be played by Christian Bale. We're super excited to see how this goes. You have me, who's a big Sim fan, and obviously Brother Thor over here, who's a huge Thor fan. So we're kind of just today going to be chatting about Gorr and his importance and what he could mean to the future of the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. We still plan on doing a full kind of discussion and breakdown, if you would, of the Thor trailer. But obviously we got to wait for the young man Cap for that. So today, like Gorgon said, we're going to be talking more so about Gorr, the main villain, how that relates to symbiotes and how that could potentially mean symbiotes coming into the MCU and what we think about that, how we think that could play out. So yeah, we're really excited. This is going to be kind of a shorter episode than our normal ones. And again, we're just going to be kind of nerding out over this topic. So Gorgon, if you want to start us off. So this all starts with, like you said, Gorr the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, which, by the way, can we just take this moment to realize how awesome that is? We got Christian Bale playing a villain.
You know, he wasn't in my mental like draft picks ready to go to play Gorr. I'm not gonna lie. Christian Bale was not in like my top 5 ready to go. Hey, you know, if Gorr comes to the MCU, throw this person out there, right? Like I've already got my null picked out in my head, right? But like Gorr, nope. Like not even there. And when I heard that Christian Bale was Gorr, I was sitting there at work smoking on my lunch break, and I just kind of like sat down for a minute, and I was like, you know what? I bet he's gonna nail it out the park, man. It's Christian freaking Bale. How often does he play a villain? Right? He's done awesome with every chance he's ever had to play a psychopath or a villain. I say let the man pop off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's just a great actor all around. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like a huge Bale, like Bale fanatic, but I mean, he's just such a great actor. And I feel like, I don't know, to me, I feel like when they get these really good actors, and not saying, other actors are worse or whatever, but when you get these guys to play like villains and just let them, take off, like this is the role, like just eat it up. That's when we get like the best kind of compelling villains. And with Gorr, especially when they cast Christian Bale, I was like, okay, for sure. Like he's not going to be like, like the kind of cheesy, maniacal villain. Like he's going to bring some depth, like some real emotion, I think, to that role. And Gorr in the comics, while he's super brutal and, downright terrifying, he's honestly a very sad character. Like when you go into his origin, like how he became the God Butcher, it's honestly tragic. Like to the point where it's like you can almost like I understand what he's getting at.
Right. I mean, like I think, our generation considered the least, like in real life, right, the least religious generation, right, in human history, despite being the largest, right? And I think there's a lot that deals with religious abandonment, right, and mistreatment that we felt like from watching our parents and before us from the gods they worship. And I think that's, art reflects real life, right? And there's the whole idea of if the gods aren't believed in, right, what's the point of them being around and alive, right, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see in Love and Thunder, right? With Zeus and all of them up there, on Mount Olympus, and then you just have Gorr, who comes from this place where he felt like his gods abandoned him. But he learns that they're real, right? He learns they're real. They're not fake. All these gods we've worshipped are real, and they just chose not to answer, to not do anything. All that anger, that resentment, that so you knew we needed help and you just let us die, right? You have this power to help and you chose not to. You are negligent and need held accountable. Fine. I'll be the one to hold you accountable. I'll hold all gods accountable. All gods must die. That is Gorr's motto and mantra, and I can't hate it. I can't hate it.
Like you said, especially kind of going back a little bit. So with Gorr's origin, like you were just alluding at, so Gorr, his planet doesn't have a name. They don't specify what the name of his planet is. But Gorr comes from a planet that is like very, very devout in their religious beliefs. Like they adhere to their gods to a T. And like literally everything that they do is for the gods, in the name of the gods. And this world that he grows up on is just completely hostile. Like they don't go into specifically like what's wrong with the planet, but basically the sun never sets. So it's just a complete desert planet that never has nighttime, never has rain, and everything just like boils alive. So
if we have any listeners in Arizona, just the whole planet, it's just you guys.
Yes, the whole planet of Arizona. But so basically Gorr's race of people, they like survive by living in these caves, and they like lick like slime off of rocks because there's no water on the planet, and they basically just live shitty lives. And everyone is just like, we just have to pray to the gods, like the gods will provide, like they always have. And we see when he's a young child, his mother gets eaten by these like desert tigers, or I don't know, some kind of creature. And the last thing she says to him is something along the lines of like, trust in the gods, like, we have to go along with the gods' plans. And then fast forward, you have Gorr as, kind of a younger man, and he has a wife who's pregnant, and kind of same situation. She's like, the gods will provide, we have to have faith. And he's like, okay, I get that, but like we are all dying, like we have to do something, because he's basically trying to get them to leave these caves to search for something. And they're just, oh, like the gods are going to provide, and he's like, I mean, okay, and then boom, like earthquake hits, and his wife falls into this huge crater, pregnant wife falls into this huge crater and gone. Then fast forward again, he's like, so he convinces his people to leave this cave. I don't know if it was just him who did it, but they eventually leave, and his last son dies on the journey through the desert. And it's like a super sad, like honestly tragic scene where he's walking with them and he's like, just close your eyes and you'll never be hungry again. And it's like, oh dude, oh my God. And yeah, so like I said, it's just very tragic. And then basically this all culminates in, he is basically like, look, like the gods don't exist. Like if they exist, that we wouldn't be living like this. If the gods existed, like why would they let us like suffer like this? Like that, this proves that, the gods don't exist. And instead of like his people being like, oh yeah, like you're right, they're like, blasphemer, you're blasphemy, get out of here, like we can't have you in our group, like you're gonna make us not go to heaven or whatever because you're not a non-believer. So they basically outcast him. And when he's just traveling, he's like in the desert, just like basically dying, wishing for death. He's like, please, like, can I please just die? Like, I don't want to go to heaven. I don't want to go to hell. Like, I just want nothing. I want blackness and nothing forever. Like, that's what I want right now. And as soon as he's saying this, a huge like meteor comes down and just crashes like basically right next to him. And he goes in the meteor and he sees two gods, one all black, and then the other, the all black one stabbing another all kind of gold light sort of god, which Gorgon will kind of give us more context into. But basically this all culminates in Gorr finding out that gods are real. And not only are they real, but during this entire time that him, his family, his people have suffered, they have done nothing. And they've heard nothing. They've heard their prayers, they've heard their begs and pleas, and they have done nothing. And the one God is still somewhat alive. And he's like, help me. And Gorr's like, help what? He's like, help you. Where were you? Where were you guys this whole time when we needed help? And when he's like kind of going on his ramp, the sword from the black god that was stabbing him kind of starts consuming him and forms a weapon in his hand. And I don't know, to me, it kind of felt like a sentient sort of thing. Like it felt like Gorr wanted a weapon, so it gave him a weapon. And that's when he officially kills or butchers his first gods. And from that point on, he sets out on a path to kill and butcher all gods because he thinks
all gods must die.
Yes, they're worthless. Like his famous tagline, all gods must die. And like, again, given that backstory, given that backstory, you can kind of understand his reasoning. And it's like, again, very tragic character. And I hope we get some of that in Thor Love and Thunder. And again, with that kind of meat to the story, given that to Christian Bale, I think he'll just devour that.
And we were talking about this the other day, right? I've loved that, and that Thor Love and Thunder has given us one teaser, right? Not even a full trailer, just one teaser. That's it, one TV spot. I kind of want it to be that way for a while, because I think what's made this movie special and why everyone's so hyped is the lack of leaks and the lack of trailers and stuff telling you all about it. Like, we know that he's in this movie as the villain, but the one teaser we've got doesn't really show any of the tragedy. It just shows like the golden, the sunshine, right? Mm-hmm. I want maybe just one more trailer for the movie drops. That's it. And at the end of all this golden sunshine, just in the darkness, all I want to hear is just a whisper of all gods must die, or just where were you, right? Like, and it just being Christian Bale's Gorr, just his voice. Don't even show it. Just maybe show me his hand clutching the blade, and that's it. That's all the hype I need.
Yeah, I was about to say, I honestly do not want to see, like, obviously we've seen the toy leaks and stuff like that, but on screen, I would like to keep that for the movie. Like you said, a voice, maybe see like a tendril, a sim tendril or something, but keep the full reveal for the movie. Because a lot of people are kind of bashing his look based off of like the leaks and the toys and stuff, which I can understand, I guess. But I think in the movie it's gonna look a lot better, and I think he's gonna look scary, like good.
I'm still holding out that maybe when he grabs the sword, right, or after he kills, he like transforms more, like, right, like they do something in the MCU, because like he morphs more into this thing, right, than a being. I don't know. That could be a neat way for the MCU to play it off if they're not going to just straight from the start, make him look like that.
Yeah,
but that sword he grabs, man. So if y'all aren't aware, that sword is all black, the Necro sword.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to get into. So Gorgon, please, I just kind of gave the whole backstory of Gorr. So that blade that I was talking about and that god that he supposedly killed, this is where you need to jump in. Give us the context here. So what is that sword? What is the black goo? Give it to us.
So I'm gonna try to not give you guys a reading list. If y'all can see this in the video, it's only a bit of light reading to get you caught up in context, right? I had to drop it. Oh God! Like if y'all are hearing this on Spotify, I'm literally holding up 1, 2, 3, like I don't know, over a dozen volumes right now, basically, right? Starting from Silver Surfer Black all the way through Donny Cates' run, including Absolute Carnage. Most importantly, Scream is huge for us understanding, like, All Black, the relationship to Thor that the symbiotes have, right? Because of the story that we were given there. But what we've learned through what Donny Cates added is that of those two gods that we're fighting, one of them was Null, right? Null is god of the symbiotes. He existed before everything else in the Marvel universe in the blackness, right? He is god of the void. When there was nothing, there was Null, right? Period. He was there before the Celestials came in and carved light into the universe to create all that they did, the 3 major races and all that, right? Like he was there before it all. The symbiotes are his children, as we say, but they're also a part of him, right? That they took out and forged. The first of his children, he forged into a blade called All Black, the Necro sword. And it says that the first of his children to this day still fear the clang of the hammer sound, right, and the heat of the forge. And that's why giant sounds and fire hurt the earliest of his children symbiote-wise. Notice those things don't normally affect some of the newer symbiotes who come about, right? They're more distant. They don't remember through the hive, all of it happened to them way back then, right? But the earlier ones do. So that blade he used to slay Celestials is huge, right? Because it's just this one dude basically buck naked with the sword in the middle of nothingness slaying Celestials. This being is incredibly powerful, as we've seen through the King in Black event. Now, am I saying God is coming to the MCU? I don't know. I'm not saying that yet, but I'm also not saying that. What I am saying is if they choose to acknowledge that it is all black the Necro sword, right, for the blade, and they call it that in the movie, that's going to mean a lot for symbiotes in the future of the MCU. Because at the end of Homecoming, we have, or not Homecoming, sorry, too much. No Way
I
Home.
almost messed up too. No Way Home.
Yeah, right. No Way Home.
So many homes.
We have that bit of a symbiote in the bar that got left behind from Venom, right? So now there is a symbiote in the MCU. They could go a lot of ways with that. It could become 616's Venom. It could become Mania, and we can end up with Andy Ditton. It could go a lot of ways. There are a lot of people who are like, oh, it should end up on Matt Gargan, and like sure, it would make sense for the MCU, I guess. Like, since he's already there, I kind of just like personally would like to see their version of Eddie Brock and see how they do it if they are going to go for the big picture. Brock, because he is necessary for that story one day. But that sword is powerful, and that the Golden God that we saw at the time, we don't learn till the end of King in Black, right? Is the antithesis to Null, right? So if he is the god of the black and the void, then that other god is what we would call the god of light, or as we've known it for a long time, the Enigma Force, right? So the person bearing that, fighting him, is the Enigma Force, right? Well, they fail in that moment, or they win in that moment, temporarily defeat Null's avatar, since he doesn't have to physically be there, to autopilot that form from the hive. And then, so technically the Enigma Force won that battle. And then Gorr's just like, no, absolutely not. And he picks up this sword. And then that sword is lost to Null through time. And then that sword has a crazy history through him using it, through coming to Earth, being on Earth for a while. Part of it like changed like the way the Black Knight's history has been done and what's happening with their sword. It's not, right? The Ebony Blade isn't all Black the Necro sword, but it is like for lack of a better term, like a grandchild of it almost, right? Like it's part of its essence is there with it, kind of a scenario going on. So now we have direct tie to Eternals, the Black Knight, because those are both teared in there with it. We already have a symbiote in the MCU with it, right? Already ready to go for this story. But the biggest is with Thor, which, as we see in Scream, right? The history of symbiotes in Thor is long and complicated and arduous, and built a lot of our modern history the way they wrote it in. That, like, the story of Beowulf was and the Grendel are children of Null, right? These things that were being fought by Thor and them at the time to slay down, right? So it's they did. I give Cates a lot of praise on this, and that's not just to Cates. That's right. That's a part of it that goes to Bunn. Part of it goes to Clay McLeod Chapman, right? Like, everybody put a lot of work, time, and effort into making where we are now with the symbiotes in the MCU, or in the comics, and then I guess for the MCU, really grounded, right? In tying it all together. Chapman did an incredible in Scream with tying it to the Grendel and all that, and they really wove all this new lore into older comics and into our real world for us very seamlessly, very quickly. So where this could go is a lot of ways. You know, I think that's my favorite thing as a Sim fan for, yes, it's technically not MCU, but how the end of Absolute Venom number 2, right? Carnage was. They hinted at so many places. The end on that with the beach, right? Like with Eddie and the Hawaiian trip. Yeah, that could have straight up gone to Venom Island, but that's post Absolute Carnage, so that's weird, right? But we saw spirals and stuff in the way they were doing all the art and stuff, right? In that movie. That could be hinting at Carnage, which hints directly to Null, right? I feel like the MCU is setting up big Easter eggs and Sony's verse for where they want to go with symbiotes anywhere, because I don't think they know where they want to go, right? They left us believing Toxin exists, and that's with, you know, the officer, right? As it should be, because he's the first host, right? Patrick Mulligan is of Toxin. So they left us to believe that's going on right there. So Sony's symbiote stories could go wild, right?
Yeah,
They could go anywhere, but what they've done is they've given us a symbiote to the MCU.
exactly.
And where we go with symbiotes, I definitely think they're in the future for the MCU, but I think it will, where we know it's going will all determine if they call that blade All Black the Necrosword or not. It's the movie. Because
Yeah.
the implications for where that stretches in its history now in Marvel is
Mhm.
bigger than it's ever been in comics for where to go, you know?
Absolutely. And I think too, a lot of this hinges on what Sony's plans are for their Venom, Simverse, and then also what Marvel's plans are. Because I think, especially now more than ever after No Way Home, they're playing ball together more so than ever before. So I think that there's an understanding of Sony has their Venomverse and Marvel wants to do whatever it is they're doing, they want to do their own thing. And that's why, which I honestly thought was kind of hilarious, but in No Way Home, this is how I took it at least, seemed like Feige was like, "I'll take your symbiote, but you can have Tom Hardy, you can have that whole universe, but I'll take a little bit of your symbiote." And so that way,
A
again,
good trade.
exactly, it's kind of a have your cake and eat it too sort of situation. You can still have Tom Hardy be Venom, have him be in his own universe, be Eddie Brock, but now it leaves the door open for in the Marvel main universe, MCU verse, we can have one. There is now officially a symbiote in the universe. There's like really, there's no way to cut around it. There is a portion of a symbiote in the MCU right now. And also too, depending on what logic you decide to follow, there's more likely than not an Eddie Brock counterpart in the MCU universe. I mean, we
There
saw
are variants. We just saw Multiverse
exactly.
of Madness. Like,
Exactly. I'm not going to spoil any of that, but even just going to No Way Home, we see three different Peter Parkers. And not only are they three different Peter Parkers, but they're all played by different people. So that confirms that variants don't have to be, they don't have to look exactly like each other. So it
none
doesn't
of Loki's
have to,
do.
how'd you say?
Right? Only one of Loki's looks
Yeah.
like our Loki, right? President Loki looks similar, but after that, you have like War Loki, and you have like full on, like, for lack of a better
Classic
term, full on
Loki.
trickster Loki, right? You have the Croc Loki, Kid Loki.
Yeah. So while they could bring Tom Hardy, like if they really wanted to, like they could, but again, it leaves the door open. There could easily be an Eddie Brock counterpart in our MCU. But like you're saying too, it doesn't even have to be Eddie Brock. There's a lot of different characters that can take on the symbiote. Flash Thompson, for example, is a huge one. And obviously he hasn't had much to do in this, Marvel universe with the Spider-Man, but he's there, and especially with Peter and his story, that could be a pretty interesting way to kind of bring the symbiote in. You know what I mean?
I don't think we'll get it with that Flash Thompson. I know they
Me
recently
either.
dyed his hair blonde, right? So he looks closer to Flash from the
Yeah.
comics. I don't
think
I
we'll get
don't
that
think he's
either.
gonna
I'm
end
just
up.
saying it's another possibility. Just
Yeah,
an
he's
example of
too
how
comedic.
anything could happen.
He's too comedic. He's not as violent of a bully as we've had out of Flash in the past, right? And the man has legs. Like, granted, he hasn't been to Iraq and had them blown off yet. Okay, cool. Like, I get that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah,
So
and also too, we gotta feel like we kind of just brushed over this, but with Eternals and the Black Knight coming into play. And you know a lot more about Black Knight's history and the what's it called, the Ebony Blade. But
yeah,
I will say that on spoilers for Eternals if you haven't seen it yet. But in that post-credit scene where he's touching the blade, that was not a coincidental visual decision, in my opinion. The way that the black kind of like comes onto his fingers, like touches him a
no,
little bit, that was, to me, that was intentional. You don't make
that's
it look like that if you're not, like I said,
so the
intentionally
recent.
trying to drop a little hint, like not even a hint, but just laying the seed. You know what I mean? Like
No, absolutely.
how we see that visual and we get kind of an idea of what that looks like. So later on, however long it's going to take, once we do get symbiotes, will be like, oh, I've seen that before. I kind of know what that is. You know what I mean?
Right. So the recent and for anybody reading who's like or listening right now who's like, hey, when on earth did the Black Knights end up tied to the symbiote somehow with this? I'll tell you, it's in the recent Black Knights Curse of the Ebony Blade mini. It's incredible. It ends with two Black Knights, which is interesting, right? For how it goes, and they kind of did a little bit of like I'd say less of retconning the history of the Ebony Blade and more of expanding on it, right, and adding new information we didn't know, in tying it to Null, loosely tying it to Hal, right? Like it's kind of symbiotic related in essence with that, right? And what it does to the bearer. But it ends with this idea of there are two. One who sits in this eternal chair, right? And that gives them this crazy vision while one of them is out wielding the sword, right? It's a job. It doesn't matter who's the one holding the sword or the one in the chair, and they'll trade turns kind of a thing, is what they have set up going on there. And a lot of us wondered after we read it, was this testing ground for the MCU, right? Because we joke as comic fans, you know, they test ideas in comics for what we could potentially have them do MCU wise. A lot of us think, and I don't want to say that was testing ground, but given the way we got Dane Whitman and his gruffness in Eternal so quickly afterwards, it's kind of I think I'd really like it if that's where we head, is that story. So if you're looking for a good recent Black Knight story in comics to catch you up on, hey, how does this Ebony Blade tie into, you know, Thor, I'd check out Scream, right? Which is fantastic. And it's wrote by Clay McCall Chapman. There's only one volume, sadly, for the Scream Curse of Carnage run, but it's a must read. It was canceled. Everything that man touches is gold in Marvel, in my opinion. And then I would read Curse of the Ebony Blade to see how All Black the Necro Sword directly ties to symbiotes through the Black Knights. Would be a neat little story for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like I said, I mean, there's so many ways they can go with it, and especially with Dane Whitman coming into the MCU, I think again they're taking baby steps. I don't think we're gonna get symbiotes in the next movie, or I don't even think we'll get them in Love and Thunder. But I think in Love and Thunder we will be getting more of those seeds planted. And especially, I wanted to bring this up before, but when you were going through Null's history, so when Null first created All Black, he started off killing Celestials. And who was one of those Celestials that he beheaded, Gorgon?
Tell me, lay it on. Come on, make me happy.
None other than Nowhere, the celestial severed head that we have been seeing ever since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. So again, like Gorgon was saying, when Null started his kind of rampage, he started killing Celestials, and he is the one that decapitated Nowhere. So that severed head that we see in Guardians 1, Guardians 2, and even in Infinity War, that was because, I mean, they could change it in the MCU, but based off the comics, that's how that head got to be there in the first place. And having Gorr in Love and Thunder and also having the Guardians there, if that's the route they're going, I can't see how that doesn't come up. Like,
no, and if you guys are interested, less than like a dozen pages into the King in Black event, Null mecha pilots 3 freaking Celestials that we can see here. It's presumed more from what we see later in it, right? Their bodies that he now controls, these symbiote wrapped Celestials, because he killed them. He just went on a rampage and was like, nope, gotta kill these Celestials. They want to attack my home.
And if we're talking MCU, like in the MCU universe, for those who have seen Eternals, we see the kind of power scale of a Celestial and like how, like they are literal space gods. Like they created the universe, and you have in Null and All Black, the Necro Sword, you have a power there that is able to dwarf a Celestial and to consume, take over a Celestial. So just the idea of that is insane on its own. So again, having while we're not getting Null right away, you know, that's going to be very, very far along. Just having Gorr in this movie with whether they decide to call it, you know, all black the Necro Sword or however they spin it, having that potential of power is super interesting and very exciting. And I think that's where they're going to go with it. I don't see, again, the Guardians being there with the whole nowhere thing. I can't see
No,
that
it's not
not coming up.
coincidence.
Because I feel like, too, that's been a kind of not like huge mystery, but I mean, at least for us nerds, like in the Guardians movies, I feel like that's a question a lot of people do have is like, how did that head
Right.
get there? You know what I mean? Like we've seen it
Right.
multiple times now. It's not just like a thing in the background. Like they've
Because
specifically
it's severed, right? It is cut
yes.
off. So
And
it has us watching the movies being like, for those of us who aren't reading the comics, like, how the do you like behead a celestial, man? Like,
yes.
where this, what could it be that does it? And when you find out it's a being who's what, like 7 foot, maybe like 7 foot tall, right? Just a little bit taller than the average human being, right? But like a foot taller, just wielding this sword that it forged out of its own self, is slaying it. It's impressive and frightening is what it should be. I don't think, I'm with you. I don't think we're going to get symbiotes soon in the MCU, right? But y'all have to remember in Iron Man 2, we got our first little drop hint teaser Easter egg for Namor, and that's Feige's favorite. Well, we are now in phase 4, and we're not getting Namor till what, Black Panther 2? Right?
Supposedly, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
so when
I'm
it's
pretty sure it's
confirmed.
confirmed now, but until
Yeah,
I
so
hear it from Feige's mouth himself, nothing's confirmed to me.
Yeah, so like we know Namor's cast. We know the plan is for Black Panther 2, but it's been a long time coming, right? I don't think no and this idea of let's go hard with the symbiotes is something you do easy, right? That you jump to. I think it's going to be a long time coming, but symbiotes are in the MCU. They are coming to the MCU.
Yeah.
And whether I'm going to be the most annoying person on Twitter with saying God is coming to the MCU until Null is here or not will fully depend on how they like talk and lay down the lore of all black in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you just said, that's after we see this movie, that's when we'll be able to definitively say, like, oh, yeah, they are coming, or yeah, they're not coming.
They're coming. But the question is God coming?
Yes. And going back to what you're talking about too is, you know, I think people, especially now that we have so many MCU movies. I mean, what are we at, like 25 almost now? Maybe a little.
And shows. Don't forget Disney Plus
and the shows. So it's like I feel like now more than ever, people are as impatient as ever for the next big event or the like. Now that we know, like with Endgame and stuff, everyone's kind of waiting for that next big thing or the next, you know, big whatever. But I think a lot of people need to remind themselves, and if you look back throughout the MCU, they don't do, I mean, again, I'm the Marvel shill, so take all of this with a grain of salt, but they don't do anything necessarily by accident. And like not even by accident, but they're not going to just throw something like symbiotes at us. They're going to slowly throughout the course of, you know, movies or shows, again, slowly plant those seeds. And I heard someone else talk about this, and the way, I can't remember who it was, but the way they articulated it was very good, I thought. And it's, in a sense, you know, they have to teach us the language of what we're about to see. So like when we're watching, like perfect example is the multiverse, right? So the latest Strange movie deals all with the multiverse, right? But it's not like they just came out was like, oh yeah, Doctor Strange is going with the multiverse. We had Loki, we had Spider-Man No Way Home, we had Avengers Endgame, all of those things with the time travel, WandaVision, and even if you go far back as Ant-Man, just the little seeds that they planted with the quantum realm, how the quantum realm works, how time travel works, how the sacred timeline, and how there are multiverses. They had to take time to kind of, again, teach us the language of, okay, well, what is a variant? What is the multiverse?
That's a really good way to put that. I like that a lot.
Exactly. And it's like, for especially people who are casual fans and might not read the books, if you just throw out all black the Necro Sword, they're gonna be like, well, what the hell is that? Like, we need to take baby steps and kind of lead some people by the hand and again teach them the language of this universe before we full on go there. So that way, when we do get something like a symbiote, or again, going back to multiverse, people will understand it and be like, okay, like I understand this better because I saw this in Loki, or whatever. So again, with the symbiotes, it's not a matter of if they're coming, it's a matter of when and how they're gonna set that up. And again, I think a lot of people just get very impatient with this stuff. And especially going to want to talk about X-Men and the Fantastic Four and where the hell are they? And again, this is my opinion, but they are coming. But we need to learn that language of what is a mutant? How do mutants come about? Why are there mutants? Why are some people mutants? Why are some people not? Like, we need to learn a little bit about that before we're just like, bam, now there's mutants, and just go with it.
Right. You have to lead up to it here and there, right? Easter egg it. Like I said, we've had Easter eggs for what's going on with Namor and Atlantis, stretching back in small ways all the way back to Iron Man 2, right? That fans broke down. So and then we had them in Infinity War, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Infinity War, or was it Endgame, when Nat's in charge and the Wakandans are there on the Hollow and they're talking about like that deal out in the Pacific. And they're like, no, we leave it, right? That's absolutely, if you slow down, look at the map, like looking for where Atlantis would be in the more reference, right? And we know that's Feige's fate. Feige's here for the long game with things he enjoys. And that's how come I say symbiotes are coming. I could absolutely see Null coming to the MCU, but I think if he does, it's going to be a minute, right? Because the story of Null was wrote with the long game. He is a long game man. He took this lore from, right, that we had from before, these scenes that he found fascinating, right? The two gods fighting, right? And how Gorr picked up the blade. He wanted more out of that. Right? Sure, the story's purpose with Aaron, and then was grab the sword, boom, now we have, right, like this character created, go on, and everybody focused on that. But Donnie said, what's going on with those gods? What can I do with those gods? Are those free to play with? And he directly tied this to that. This idea of this character woven in so seamlessly to Thor's history, to our history, even to Shield and Fury and mutants. Right, got woven in with a short that we got called Venom. That's one of my favorites. It's about these experiments that Shield was doing on soldiers during Vietnam, with symbiotic matter, right? And it's all of this is important, particularly for Spider-Man fans, because for years we thought that Spider-Man brought the symbiote to Earth and that he was responsible, and he's bared this weight for years. And what this has taught us is symbiotes have always been around. They've been on this earth, right? Even without him bringing the Venom symbiote in the comics to us, Venom was always going to make it here because they've been here, right?
Damn, I never thought of that, but that's a great point, Gorgon. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, they've been here. It wasn't his burden, right? So in part of the last issue of King in Black is Eddie, or sorry, the Venom run from Cates is Eddie telling Pete, because they're friends now, right? And good friends. Pete's almost like a godfather to Dylan, right? Eddie's son, and telling him like it's not yours to bear. They've always been here. You're not responsible, right? Like Pete wanted to punch him because Eddie's known that for a long time, but they've never really had a moment where they're not saving the world to slow down and tell him that and to be impactful, right? So he made sure that he got to tell him that. It's a huge deal, right, for Spider-Man fans, for it to come full circle. Because the reality is, and this is super important for the MCU, symbiotes do not need Spider-Man for their story to be told. This giant stack that I held up earlier is all symbiotes just since 2018 stories, right? None of it needs Spider-Man to function. Symbiote lore is expansive, bigger than ever, and it stands on its own. It doesn't need Spider-Man. It's evolved past where we started, and I think that's important, right? Particularly for the MCU, because Sony can tell its own thing. So can Marvel. Would I prefer, if we get Null, it to be in the MCU as opposed to the Sonyverse? Absolutely, 100%.
Bro, I don't mean to talk trash, but I do not trust Sony with Null, man. Like,
I don't mean to talk trash.
Please let him be in the MCU.
Either, but I don't. Palik Patel, who's in charge of like everything, right, with Sony and them, or whoever is over there with that. Like, nah, man. Like, I don't trust you. I would rather see Feige in charge of Null. And how that all goes down. That's just me personally. I think Null has to be a build up, big Easter egg stories that make sense, that like I said, teach you the language of it. And I don't think that's something we're going to get from Sony on this. So if I were to see it, I want it to be Marvel. That would, or MCU, I guess, right? It'd still be Marvel, just MCU. Yeah.
So let me ask you though, because I was kind of thinking about this, and I think you have a better understanding of the kind of background of all this stuff. How will that work as far as like the rights go? So like obviously Sony has the rights to Spider-Man and like Spider-Man adjacent characters, but what about like the term symbiote? Does Sony have a like claim, like could, if we do get symbiotes in the MCU, can they call them symbiotes, or is it going to be a mutant enhanced situation like in the earlier?
I don't want to say symbiote, like the symbiote fandom that I collectionally call the Hive, right? The Hive would lose its mind if we're not allowed to call symbiotes.
Oh yeah,
right?
they'll lose their mind. I'm just saying, what do you think? Do you think like legally, not what they would like to do, but as like I said, as far as their deal goes between Marvel and Sony, do you think that's even a big deal, or is that
you know what? I don't think it's a big deal, and here's why. I think Sony has learned. I think Sony has learned that working with Feige and Marvel is important, right? As we've heard from I can't remember her name, the lady in charge of like scheduling all that, right?
Yeah.
I think they've learned how important it is and how impactful it is for the development of their universe, for their movies to come out right. Mm-hmm. They did their own thing with the Venoms, right? And then we got an announcement of an Olivia Wilde led female Spidey project that we're all assuming is Spider-Woman, right? Well, it's been like a year. We've heard nothing on that.
Time.
But we know that Kraven is filming right now, right? Kraven the Hunter's filming, which is crazy to me. And then we know that we got a Madam Web movies announced, and we already have casting announcements made, right? And alleged leaks coming out from that, but still nothing on this Spider project. What I think is important because of something that we just got in Multiverse of Madness. I don't think it's a major spoiler off the trailer, but the place Woundagore is mentioned, which is a huge deal to the greater like where Marvel could go, particularly Spider-Woman these days with her current lore, and to the Black Knights with their history lore, with Morgan Le Fay once being in prison there. Like Woundagore is a huge deal. And I wonder if maybe the reason we haven't heard anything out of the Olivia Wilde Spider-Woman movie is maybe it will be MCU and Sony Marvel collab, kind of like their Spider-Mans would. I'd really like to see that. This is just tinfoil hat here, but that's a massive Easter egg, right? And Olivia Wilde is a massive talent to name drop and then not mention for a year. That's not something you'd want to waste, particularly with the hype. I could see that being a thing. So I think the Sony Marvel relationship has gotten a lot better thanks to the Spider-Man movies. I wouldn't see them leaving us a symbiote, letting us do this stuff in Eternals and set up for this big picture stuff if we weren't allowed to play with the toys in the sandbox.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? There's no sense in being like, you can have the helmet of the action figure, but not the rest of the action figure.
Yeah.
Let the kids play. Give us the whole kit, you know?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like I said, with the whole, like the way the rights technically go, like are they gonna have to do some whack, like what was it in the first Venom movie? I mean, they changed it, but in the first trailer they were like symbiote, or like they said it super weird, you know what I'm talking about?
Symbiotes.
Yes.
And they had to rework it because everybody was livid.
I remember, like, what the fuck is a symbiote, bro? Like
everybody was livid at her pronunciation, and like you know, like we're all understanding that nerds come from all around the world, accents are gonna have weird dialects, but nobody wanted to hear symbiotes. Everybody was angry.
I remember hearing it. I'm like, wait, what the hell is she talking about?
I don't think it's gonna matter rights wise. I don't know how the rights go for sure, but just because of the way their relationship has grown, I don't think it matters. I think they're going to be more willing to work with each other than ever before, right? That's how come I mentioned like where it's come with Spider-Man, where I think they're going with Spider-Woman, tinfoil hat theory, right? I think the relationship's a lot better than people give it credit for. I really do. Or else, like, or to put it the best way I can. If you were to sit down with someone, give them an idea, and then they were just to like throw a freaking sandwich in your face and storm off, right? You'd probably be like, nope, this relationship is over, done, like wash under the bag. But
Mhm.
that's what built their relationship, right? With
Yeah.
Feige and Sony, and all this. So I think that their relationship has to be a lot better than we give it credit for. And I think they're probably going to be more likely to share and collab and connect it more than ever before, particularly with how big multiverse is. It's easy to be like, yeah, these characters connect, but these ones stay just in this universe, these stay in here. I I think we just got to be patient on that, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. And like you said, I think their relationship's better than it's ever been. And I think too, if we're being honest, like you kind of alluded to earlier, I think Sony more or less kind of learned like it's better for us to work with them than against them. And not saying like they ever were like actively trying to like work against Marvel, but I think in the beginning they were like, this is ours, like we don't want any help, like this is our lane, we want to do it ourselves, and we don't want anything to do with this. And I think people like those movies. I'm not gonna trash on the movies or whatever, but kind of underwhelming, if you will say. And I think that they learned after the success of No Way Home and even Far From Home and Homecoming, they learn like, okay, like if we play ball, it's a lot better for us to play ball with them than to try and ignore them. And I think now, and with them letting Marvel kind of in more and seeing how that improves their films, I think that the future is bright for a Marvel Sony partnership. Does that mean that I think that they're going to give Marvel like complete control over them? No, like they want that back for sure. They're going to keep that. And they're going to milk this cow till it's dead. I mean, they already are. We're getting a freaking Craven movie, and
We're getting 3 more Spidey movies with him in college, allegedly. Yeah.
what is that movie? Well, I don't even know the guy's name. I'm an old man now, but that rapper the like character that's been in one comic book, dude.
Oh, no, no, but yeah, he's been in 2. They just announced it the other day, and I'm drawing a blank now. Yeah, but they just announced like, yeah, they're doing some obscure movies, right? Like a Madam Web movie seems so bizarre to a lot of people. I can see it as a Spidey fan and Symbiote fan, right? Like, and not that Madam Web's necessary for the Symbiote in any way, but just with all the Spidey lore and everything, I could see it. Madam Web could be a key player in tying in the Spider people to the multiverse, particularly if they are going to do this.
Spider-Verse.
Yeah, more collaborative, unification, and then having, hey, these are here. Madam Web could be important for establishing where they want to go with that future. So it's not a full out in left field for me, I don't think, to see a Madam Web movie. I'm excited for where it goes, and I'm really excited to see what we get in Love and Thunder with Gorr. And if they do call it All Black the Necro Sword, right? Like all this about where symbiotes could go, could we get Null, and all this all comes back down to, are they going to call the sword that Gorr holds All Black the Necro Sword, and are they going to hint or expand on its history at all in the movie? Right? Yeah. That's what this all comes back down to, and I am super
also
excited.
Too, how they choose to show the All Blacks like abilities, like as like with Gorr especially. Like, are we gonna see him like forging new weapons out of like the I lack better symbiote, yeah, like
the matter, for lack of a better term, the symbiotic matter, yeah,
exactly.
that is the sword.
Like, are we gonna see stuff like that, or are they gonna go the route of it's just gonna be more of like an actual sword? You get what I mean?
And you know what? I kind of like it. We were talking earlier on the shift of his form.
Mm-hmm.
If the cape that we see like Gorr wears sometimes, right, comes from the sword. I would like it if his like hood and that comes from it, becomes part of him, and like his form shifts after his first kill. That could be sick.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it is in the books. Is like the books, he has a kind of black cloak over him, and that's what the cloak is. It's the symbiote, the like you said, symbiotic matter. So I think also, again, going back to the whole toy leaks and like the promo stuff and people complaining about Gorr's look, I think you just brought up a great point. I think potentially in the movie, what we're seeing in these leaks, because he's kind of in like a just regular like garbs, you know, for lack of a better word, just kind of regular white kind of cloth.
Just a
But
plain dude in robes, which
yeah,
he
just
would be
robing it.
on his planet before, since he was devout.
Exactly. So, like you said, maybe once he acquires the sword, we just haven't seen it in the toys and stuff, but he'll, like you said, you know, get the black cloak and, you know, have, you know, making weapons and all that. So I think, like you said, how they decide to deal with his powers and how the sword works and everything is really going to be the determining factor of where we're going in the future.
Well, and it's, with this movie, right? Jason Aaron's run on Thor and Unworthy Thor and Mighty Thor, right, are obviously, and the Gorr the God Butcher arc are obviously huge inspiration for this film with Jane and everything, right? And then that's where we first get, as we said, right, these gods that crash, who later we learn are the Enigma Force, the God of Light, and Null, right, or an avatar of Null at the time. So it's depending. This movie really is huge in a lot of ways for the future of the MCU, despite the lighthearted tone that we've got from the one teaser, right? Like for a lot of big picture fans looking for more, this story is huge in foundation to where it went in comics. And I think this movie is going to be huge, in my opinion, bigger than Multiverse of Madness was for the future of where we go in the MCU. And I loved Multiverse of Madness, by the way. Just saw it 2 nights ago for all y'all listening on it. I'll do my best to not give spoilers to you guys. Y'all got to go see it. But realistically, it adds like 2 new places for sure, right? To the Marvel Universe, and 2 more people to the roster for the Marvel Universe for the future. And that's it, right? And they're just name dropped of places. It's all about where could they go with these places, right? And it's options that we knew we already had in the barrel for places to go before for the MCU, right? It just more confirmed, it could still go one of those ways and probably will soon, right? And that's important. And it was more of a great focused Strange and Wanda story, in my opinion, than it was for the expansion, because we already knew where we were going to go with these Easter eggs and places that it dropped for us, right? But Gorr changes things because of what he did for the comics and shaping the future, and the way the history has been rewrote with the symbiotes and all. His existence in this movie, in my opinion, is going to be more key to determining the future of this next 2 phases of the MCU, the Multiverse of Madness was.
Yeah, and I'm like you were saying, we're not gonna go into spoilers or anything. We are planning on making a video for Multiverse of Madness where we're gonna discuss in full all of these things. But like you were saying, in reality, while Multiverse of Madness is a huge movie as far as different realities and all this stuff, at the end of the day, which really surprised me, it's actually a very contained story. It's very contained to Strange and Wanda. And on the flip side, I think with this new Thor movie, a lot of people are thinking it's going to be very contained, sort of like Ragnarok and, Thor the Dark World were. But given the players that are in this movie, I think, like you were saying, it could potentially be a lot more world building than even Multiverse of Madness was. And we also have to remember too, again, we got to remember what players we're getting in this movie. I mean, we have the entire Guardians cast in this movie. While I don't think that they are going to be in the movie long, if you're asking my opinion, I think they'll probably be in it in the very beginning. And
first, third arc or whatever.
Yeah, maybe the first 20, 30 minutes or something before they kind of set off on Gorr. But I would be very, very shocked if what happens in this Thor movie does not at least set up a little bit of where the Guardians are going to be in their 3rd movie. Because while we still have a while to go, it wouldn't make sense to me for them not to at least again set up where they're going in the 3rd movie. When they leave Thor, where are they going to go? And I think that's going to again kind of be a little toss up of where what we might see in Guardians 3. And then we obviously have Jane Foster Thor. What's the future with that? Are we, is she going to stick around? We have Olympus and the Olympian gods. they're expanding in a lot of ways that I think people aren't really realizing. And I think, like you said, it has potential to really be kind of game changing for where the MCU might want to go in the future.
And if you'll like all this like sim talk of it, you'll know I'm like a nuts for symbiotes. We will have a sim episode soon where I just nerd out with you guys about like how big symbiotes currently are in comics, because I think a lot of people don't understand the scale of them. But that's kind of part of why this Gorr is important. And All Black, because symbiotes are bigger than ever in comics. They are everywhere right now, and their ties are everywhere. They go back to Gorr. They go back directly to Thor and the Grendel, right? They're tied to Shield. They're tied to mutants back in the day through the Shield experimentation, and Wolverine, knowing that they've been around since the Vietnam, right? Like Logan's known that symbiotes were there for like 30 something years before Peter Parker ever showed up with one as a suit, right? Like that's kind of important. You know what I mean? They've been around. They're stretched everywhere. We have symbiotes in space, on Earth, different places on Earth. We have some working with the government, some on the run from the government, some that have like weird levels of clearance nonsense right now, right? They're spawning, expanding. There's New Birth. There's the Fallen Hive from Null that some can access. There's Carnage's version of a hive mind that's separated off, right? Some are bound to the hive. Some are solo sentient. Like they are bigger, wider, everywhere, right? And their big introduction all comes down to these small little Easter eggs, right? Like Marvel building, like we were talking about. And Gorr is the key for not just this potential for them in the MCU, but for where do we go with Thor after this, right? Where do we go with Jane Foster, right? Is she going to stick around? Is this going to be wrapping up all of her arc in a single movie?
Which we'll definitely be discussing all of that in our Thor official breakdown. But yes, exactly. Like this is the kind of, the match that lights the flame, depending on what they want to do with it. This can be the thing that starts all of this off.
Yeah, man. Like we haven't, like I said, I don't feel like we've had anything in a while in an MCU movie where it's like that will determine a key for where they go from here, right? But in my opinion, that we've been able to say for a while, because wrapping up this last arc, right, of phase 3 and starting phase 4, we've been in this place where we kind of knew where we were headed next, right? We kind of knew what was coming after the end of phase 3 to start phase 4. We kind of knew the starting block of phase 4 and what it might set up for, right? And places we can go. And like I said, I feel like Multiverse of Madness really just confirmed, yes, we could go here. Yes, this is coming eventually, right? It didn't add a whole lot of like, this is the pivot point from here, in my opinion. But I really personally feel like Gorr is the big pivot point. And if you guys are looking for more Gorr content, Thor, lay us down a Gorr content run for these folks to read and catch up on real quick.
Yeah, so if you guys are trying to read about Gorr, obviously first and most important place to go is Thor, God of Thunder from Jason Aaron. I think it's the first 10 issues, I want to say, are all about Gorr. That's the God Bomb arc, and that will give you everything you need to know about Gorr, the all-black Necrosword, as it was in that story. Like Gorgon's saying, later on with King in Black, it gets expanded a lot. But yeah, as far as Gorr goes, that's what you want to read, God of Thunder. And I would also put in there King Thor, which is a 6-issue mini that is basically kind of the epilogue of Jason Aaron's entire Thor run. But Gorr plays a pretty prominent role in that 6-issue mini. And I will say too, I think probably has the most brutal kind of Gorr moment, in my opinion. It's very almost downright scary. So that's what I would recommend. If you guys are looking for what to read for the movie in general, I would say just pick up anything that's Thor with Jason Aaron on it. If it's Jason Aaron Thor, then you can't go wrong. That's basically what the whole movie, and his run is very long. So that includes God of Thunder, that includes the Mighty Thor, that includes Unworthy Thor, and like I said, King Thor as well. So there's a lot of reading to do, but again, if it's Jason Aaron and it's Thor, then you can't go wrong. That's what I would recommend.
And if you guys wanted a place for how symbiotes directly tie to Thor, with the Grendel and with everything on it, surprisingly not a Venom comic, Scream, Curse of Carnage by Clay McLeod Chapman. I cannot recommend this book enough. The art in it is incredible. And all it does with Thor and tying it directly into what we know of the story of Beowulf is super neat, super fun read. And it give you guys a little bit of like tie-in history for like why we're like, yo, like, yeah, Gorr and Thor mean symbiotes are coming.
Yeah.
Like, what? How does that happen? Like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really all we got today. Like I said, we just wanted to really nerd out about this stuff, more so kind of just get it out of our heads.
Honestly.
We're hoping Cap will be back. Don't worry, he will be back. And Shield Talk is still coming. That's going to be our next full episode is still going to be Shield Talk. So sorry we're a little late with it, but we hope you guys are still excited. As far as other things, though, we got a lot of exciting things that we're planning on doing and some things coming down the pipeline. You guys can look forward to our Thor trailer episode. We're going to be discussing the trailer in full. You also can look forward to Moon Knight. We're going to be talking Moon Knight. And of course, we're going to be talking Multiverse of Madness as well. All going to be separate episodes. So keep a lookout for those to hear our complete thoughts, breakdown, and spoilers for all of those. And we're really excited. If you guys like our videos, if you like this episode, please consider giving us a like, subscribe, hit us up on Twitter. And yeah, you got anything else, Gorgon?
Yeah, if you're on YouTube, if you would go down in the comments right now while you're watching this, if you made it this far to the end of the episode, thank you. If you would comment down there for me in the bottom, right, what you're hoping to see out of Gorr in Thor Love and Thunder after listening to us. And then if you guys would notice, we should have a new logo coming up. Before we wrap up out of here, Brother Thor, why don't you tell us about this fancy new logo, because I'm excited.
Yes, so we have a logo finally, officially. We got it from our good friend, Nate. So yeah, we got a new logo. It looks amazing. I'm going to pop it up on the video once this is edited. But the homie Nate Taylor did this for us. He is an amazing artist. He's actually working on a book right now with our friend of a show, Derek, also known as Grimace Wayne. They're making a book called Wanted Man, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Nate's just a super cool guy. He did the logo for us. And if you guys want to check him out, go follow him on Twitter at N Comics. And also go on Amazon and check out his book, Wonka Mania. He has a book, Wonka Mania. We'll be tweeting out the link to that later, and I'll also put it in the description of this video. So yes, please go check it out. He is awesome. He's a great guy, and his art is amazing. If you guys are working on a book or want some commissions, hit him up, because he is amazing, and he'll do, pretty much anything you need him to do. So yeah,
shout out to Nate. Shout out to you guys and the listeners for being here today. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us again. This was supposed to be a short episode, but we kind of went off the grid here. But we hope you guys enjoy it, and we hope you guys are excited for the return of Cap.
I knew that wasn't going to happen. A short episode where I get to talk about symbiotes and you get to talk about Thor? Nah, that's never going to happen.
I got this all day.